Consultation. This edition is lovingly dictated to the memory of the founders of the Order of Christian Mystics, Pyrmos and Ramiam, and to the teacher of the order, who on earth was called Helena Petrova Blavatsky. Preface. The path to mastery is marked by the severest self-discipline, absolute obedience, and unswerving allegiance to the chosen teacher or guru. Throughout the ages, this training has been administered most rigorously by various teachers, societies, and brotherhoods, so much so that the neophyte, once having pledged himself to any one occult school or teacher, was dominated as what he could eat, wear, do, think, and believe, having almost no freedom of body or mind. Such training was necessary in the past, and still is for some. The helpfulness of that method consisted in bringing the student to a realization of the greatness of his calling, the littleness of the personal self, the emptiness of the pleasures of sense, and the barrenness of physical life, as compared with the fullness and glory of spiritual attainment. While the Order of the 15 recognizes that the occult law back of the outer observances required by former movements is as true today as ever, and that discipline, obedience, and faithfulness are as requisite today as of old, still being an advanced order, it must employ advanced methods for attaining the same ends. The objects of the Order of the 15. Object 1. Complete individuality through union with the higher self. The Order of the 15 is put forth to gather together those who are willing to face themselves and who are sufficiently advanced to consciously take into their own hands the responsibility for the disciplining of their lives. Those souls who are earnestly attracted to its teachings and will ultimately be drawn into its ranks, and those who in former lives have passed through the severe disciplining and personal training mentioned above, and hence should be ready to recognize the necessity for discipline and desire the conscious realization of the higher life so sincerely as to be willing to make its attainment their chief aim in life. They must give the same implicit obedience, not blind, but that which is born of perfect confidence, and the same unswerving allegiance to their teachers of old. This time not because of vows to an earthly teacher or brotherhood enforced by penalty, but voluntarily and gladly, with no human voice to command and no great personality to follow. For in this case the teacher whom they must learn to recognize and obey is their own divine Father in heaven, their higher self, who speaks to them in the sanctuary of their own hearts. The ideal put forth by this order is therefore one of constant self-mastery and obedience to the personal guidance from within, and prompted by the earnest desire for spiritual growth and the ability to help humanity to a greater realization of the Christ consciousness. The teachings of this order are entirely constructive, for if only the true is persistently put forth, the false will disappear of itself. This teaching is the acme of individualism mastery, the manifestation of the real self for the individual, and the acme of oneness for the race. Necessarily, the fundamental assumption of this teaching is the possibility of each soul coming into conscious personal touch, not only with his own Father in heaven, but also with those great souls, the masters of love and wisdom, who are the elder brothers and guardians of the race. The Order of the 15 is one of the avenues through which these great souls are working to lead their followers into personal relationship. It is a testing ground for those who have passed the test of enforced discipline, an opportunity for them to prove their ability and willingness to follow the guidance that comes from within. Naturally, many are called, but few are chosen, for only those are finally chosen and admitted to full membership who have proven their ability to stand firm and be trained to work unselfishly for humanity along the special lines laid down by this order through its agents. It is a far more advanced step to voluntarily give love, fidelity, and obedience to a teacher, because your own soul recognizes the source of these teachings, the objects of the movement, and the sacrifice necessarily made by these agents that you may receive the teachings, than to give such allegiance because of any form of compulsion. Object 2. Personal training in the philosophy of life. The personal training of each pupil is carried on partly on the inner planes and partly by correspondence with the teacher of the order through the secretary. Such correspondence is open to all who need personal help with the problems of their soul life. The answers will contain explanations of the spiritual laws which apply to the individual needs of the pupil. Definite commands will not be given, for the training is designed to foster in the individual perfect freedom of choice and to develop the strength of will necessary voluntarily to apply the law to his own problems. The letters are signed by the secretary merely as an agent of the teacher, and only if the intuition of the pupil can grasp the fact that the instruction given is more than the human wisdom of the agents can its real significance be appreciated. Necessarily, such letters are more or less cryptic, and hence require meditation, that the light of intuition may reveal their true meaning. The method of teaching employed by the teacher of this order is one in which praise and flattery of the pupil plays little part. Rather, the teacher points out the stumbling blocks in this pupil's path to realization, and tests both his intuition, his sincerity, and his humility. Only the determined and the courageous can win final victory. Object number 3, a higher standard of purity on all planes. It is comparatively easy for one who is determined to lead the Christ life to curb his grosser passions, refrain from acts of impurity and injustice, and lead what the world calls an upright life. But the requirements for entering the mysteries are far more exacting. Ere he can safely enter the more advanced stages of occultism, he must learn to control the currents of his thoughts, as well as his words and acts. Hence, the Order of the 15 helps its pupils to gain a higher conception of purity on all planes, especially in their ideas in regard to the use of the great creative force. Object 4, the esoteric interpretation of the Bible. While many orders, societies, and organizations base their teachings upon various Eastern scriptures or medieval teaching, this order teaches that the Christian Bible contains the same spiritual teachings and the same occult philosophy found in the older scripture. Furthermore, it is couched in terms which appeal to the Western type of mind once the esoteric key to its symbology and mysticism is known. This key, the Order of the 15 gives to its students, thus enabling them to apply the underlying laws of every parable, allegory, and miracle to their own spiritual growth. Object 5. Training the senses to respond to vibrations from all planes. This order offers no formulas or exercise for developing psychic powers, teaching that all such faculties should evolve gradually as a natural result of normal spiritual growth. Hence, they should not be sought for or forced through special forms of concentration or sitting for development, etc. But as the soul evolves, the senses must respond to higher notes of vibration and awaken to higher states of consciousness. When this occurs, the pupil must be taught both how to protect himself from the many dangers of the psychic realm, and also how to make the best use of the newly acquired powers in furthering his spiritual growth. Perhaps the earliest recognition the pupil has of the divine guidance of his Father in heaven is through symbolic dreams and visions. The teacher of the order aids the pupil in interpreting such spiritual lessons until he is sufficiently versed in the language of symbology and methods of interpretation to grasp the lesson for himself. This work is a part of the personal correspondence with the teacher of the order. Object 6. Preparation for the coming world teacher, the Avatar. Like nearly all advanced thinkers along spiritual lines and all advanced spiritual movements of today, the Order of the 15 expects a great spiritual teacher to appear on earth during the early years of this century. Hence, one of the main objects of this order is so to train its pupils that, through their own intuitions, they may learn to recognize and respond to the influence of that great teacher upon the higher planes, so that when the days of the famine come, not a famine of bread, nor a thirst for water, but of hearing the words of the Lord, the days when they shall run to and fro to seek the word of the Lord, the days which precede the coming of the Avatar, they shall not be deceived, but shall find and know. Only by a recognition of the great teacher upon the higher planes, or by recognizing him through his teachings, can humanity hope to know him when he appears in the flesh. Object 7. Special training in recognizing the oneness of truth wherever found. While we have heard much of universal brotherhood and its various methods of attainment, from the reign of terror to the present day, still this order teaches a new conception of this much-to-be-desired state. Since the human race reflects truth, like a diamond reflects light, through many facets, universal brotherhood can never be achieved by all men thinking alike. Nor do we believe such an achievement desirable, for in nature we find perfect brotherhood expressed in many forms. The oak and the violet at its root receive the life force from the same soil, air, water, and sunshine, yet each developed to perfection. In the same way, the Order of the 15 strives to send out the one life and permits each soul to assimilate it and grow to the perfection of his own individuality and perfect freedom. Hence, our idea of universal brotherhood is universal recognition of the oneness of truth in its various expressions or unity and diversity, thereby manifesting perfect tolerance towards all. Introduction. How often would I have gathered thy children together, as a hen doth gather her brood under her wings, and ye would not. The Egyptians recognized and adored the productive principle, both in nature and in man, under the symbol of Isis, the universal mother, the power of bringing forth in humanity the divine child or the Christ. The title of this volume indicates that its teachings are designed to bring forth in humanity a new conception of the spiritual life through the development of the mother love, that divine feminine principle of the soul which brings forth in the daily life. Isis was also called the Mother of God, the Celestial Virgin, and the Queen of Heaven, just as her counterpart, the Virgin Mary, is among Christian peoples, and was usually represented carrying in her hand the crux ansata. It was none other than Cyril, Bishop of Alexandria, who openly embraced the cause of Isis and anthropomorphized her into Mary, Mother of God. While we do not worship Isis or Mary as a personality, yet we recognize that which they symbolize, for it is only by a recognition of the mother principle of love and compassion that we can bring forth the Christ child individually in our hearts and lives, and collectively in humanity. Heretofore, most teachings of the religio-philosophic character have been given out as a form from the intellectual or father aspect of truth, and have in a measure appalled humanity by a sense of the great gulfs to be crossed and the great heights to be attained ere the Father's house is reached. But in this volume, the teachings are presented as from the lips of a loving, tender mother taking her children into her arm, weak, sinful, and disobedient though they be, and helping them over the hard places by teaching them at her knee how, by the mastery of the little things of daily life, they shall, step by step, attain to the status of the divine manhood exemplified in the Father. This volume is composed of the monthly lessons sent out by the Order of the 15, considerably elaborated and enlarged. The lessons in this volume will no longer be issued separately in pamphlet form. These teachings are presented in love and compassion with the earnest desire to sympathize with and help upward and onward the mother's struggling sons and daughters. The Great Mother holds out her arms to all her children, be they pagan, Jew, Christian, or non-Christian, recognizing that each child must feed at its mother's breast and partake of the milk of her love and sympathy no matter what the circumstance of his or her physical life or what their religious training. These teachings will appeal most strongly to those whose hearts can recognize the great mother love now being poured upon the world to prepare it for the coming of the great spiritual teacher or avatar who is soon to appear and who will promulgate the teachings for the coming sixth sub-race and prepare a nucleus for the great sixth race. Chapter 1. Life's Duties. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. Ecclesiastes 9:10. Believe thou not that sitting in dark forests, in proud seclusion and apart from men, believe thou not that life of roots and plants, that thirst assuaged with the snow from the great range, believe thou not, O devotee, that this will lead thee to the goal of final liberation, from the voice of silence. Many students of the higher life find themselves surrounded by conditions which absolutely preclude their devoting themselves to study and to the observances which seem necessary for self-development. Life often seems to press so heavily upon them that both body and mind are wearied to the point of exhaustion, and both men and women are reduced to the state of beasts of burden. Yet even here let us seek a remedy. There are two classes of duties, the real duties which must be performed, and the mere superfluities of life which are wont to call duties, but which we voluntarily impose upon ourselves. No real duty is given you which you have not the strength to perform or without a purpose to be gained by its performance. Real duties do not exhaust you, for as thy days, so shall thy strength be. Instead of letting any duty arouse in your mind the thought that it can by any possibility separate you from the inner light, or from your spiritual development or your real advance along the path, or prevent you from drawing close and learning wisdom at the Master's feet, realize that it would be impossible for you to take one step onward while you are leaving any real duty undone. But to attain true renunciation of action without devotion through action is difficult. O thou of mighty arms, while the devotee who is engaged in the right practice of his duties approach the Supreme Spirit in no long time. The second class are imaginary duties or self-imposed tasks, which cater only to superfluities and are fulfilled simply to propitiate the world's opinion. The first duty of each student of the higher life is to make a careful analysis and decide what are real and what are superficial duties, then to so order his life that the real, vital, and first duty of caring for his immortal soul will not be crowded out. To do this, he must look upon duty in a new light. Many persons, recognizing the false light in which duty has been presented, strive to do away with it altogether, saying that nothing should be done that is not a joyful service. While we agree with this view for a certain stage of development, still it is often necessary to require children to perform duties which later in life they find to be a joyful service. All real duties confront you because in your evolution you have set up conditions which make just these tasks necessary to build into your soul certain qualities in which you are lacking. In short, they are the result of the great law of karma, and without the lessons they teach, your character is incomplete. Hence, they are the things which, when they are performed, and to the qualities they are meant to develop are incorporated into your being, will give you the strength and ability to take your next step. We hear many say the household cares or business duties occupy so much of their time that they cannot find time to enter the silence. Hence, there is no use trying to live the higher life, since the many interruptions make it impossible. Instead of taking such an attitude of mind, realize that such duties and interruptions are your task, and make them yield you your lesson. Every morning, select some text or thought and fix your mind upon it during the day, making every task, be it ever so trifling, yield something toward the main idea. If you are seeking poise, take for your daily meditation the thought of divine love. Think of this expressing itself as calmness, unchanged and unmoved by anything. If constant interruptions occur, realize that perhaps they furnish just the lesson you need. That is, the power to remain calm interiorly in the face of outward activity. Since all real duties are your task, in them lies your opportunity, and in their proper performance lies your victory. Not in the performance merely, but in the attitude of mind you hold toward them and the manner of their performance. If you perform a duty because you are compelled to and fail to incorporate its lesson in your heart, at your next step you will find yourself confronted by another duty of the same general character, but far more difficult of performance. And this will continue until you not only perform the duty, but gain the lacking quality of soul this duty is intended to inculcate. If business cares seem to hold you in a net of sordid money-getting, learn from them the lesson of persistence, that just as no complication in business life can daunt you, so in your spiritual life nothing can prevent you from obtaining spiritual gold. Teach your subconscious mind to know and to realize that only that which can be brought to the Christ for his blessings is legitimate. Learn to have faith that you shall achieve if you learn this lesson. There was one real duty which confronts all students of the higher life that cannot be ignored, that is, to decide just what avenue of help is most beneficial, not only to their own advancement, but also the one which brings the greatest amount of practical help to humanity. It is not enough to say that you can gain good from all sources. For while that may be true, still your personal development is not the first duty that confronts you, for that comes as a result of living the Christ life and trying to help humanity. While you should do the individual duties presented to you, you should also lend your forces to increase the power of the organized movement put forth by the Masters of Wisdom for the help of humanity. Such organized movements are like great rivers which, although they depend upon teeny springs and streamlets for volume, yet unite these into something far different from and far greater usefulness than the individual springs and streamlets contributing to them. Hence your first duty is conscientiously, prayerfully, and earnestly to seek for the special channel through which you desire to help humanity. And when found, throw in that channel all you have to give, whether it be money, the easiest of all things to give, or love, devotion, and thought, or service. Fear not to seek. The pilgrim who would cool his weary limbs in running water, yet dares not plunge for terror of the stream, risks to succumb from heat. Inaction based on selfish fear can bear but evil fruit. No soul can consciously advance who is not helping in the uplifting of all. If you cannot find time to enter the silence, still no power in heaven and earth can keep the silence from entering into you if you will let it. For the silence is the peace of God that passes understanding. While doing the duties of the day, your mind need not be chained to them. It is not what your hands are doing, but what your heart is worshiping that determines your growth. If you make business or household cares your God, you will of necessity retard your more rapid spiritual advance. For as long as you are worshiping a false god, your spiritual evolution is being retarded. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. If, on the contrary, you make of your duties stepping stones to the real worship of your heart, you will find them a great help. Hands and mind may both be occupied by well using them and in the very performing of the task, and because it is hampering, you must dive deep into the divine and seek in your own heart for the sustaining power, and not depend upon earthly surroundings to bring it to you. Just as a tree which finds itself planted in a crevice of a rock must send its roots deep down to seek the streams that are hidden from sight, ere it can maintain its growth. Under such circumstances, the tree often attains greater perfection than one planted on the plain, for the streams that run deep are refreshing and uncontaminated and are unfailing. If you are persistent and determined in this seeking, you will gain more growth from meeting everything as it comes to you than one who can sit for hours in silence, yet who has not learned to control the children of his own brain. There is no duty higher than the one which lies nearest, provided it be a real duty. It is not a real duty to try to relieve another from doing his plain duty, for it is better to do one's own duty, even though it be devoid of excellence, than to perform another duties well. It is better to perish in performance of one's own duty. The duty of another is full of danger. Like the children of Israel, who had each to gather manna for himself alone, and could gather only enough for one day, so is each one given strength to perform all the real duties of each day. But if this strength is wasted in assumed duties, or is used up in doing for another that which is necessary for his development that he do for himself, then you are depleted, and your duties, like the manna gathered in excess, become a menace to your growth rather than a help. The object of evolution is to gain wisdom out of every condition. Whatever the condition that confronts you, know well that it will never leave you until you have gained the wisdom it is intended to teach. Everything that comes to you in the way of trouble and sorrow is simply the result of your own shortcoming or lack of some soul quality which only such experience can teach you. In fact, this is the underlying idea of karma. Not that it is a punishment or even an inevitable law of suffering which you must endure to the end, but that in the course of your evolution your higher self finds that you lack certain soul qualities, hence chooses to incarnate in certain families and under certain conditions which will bring out the soul qualities which are lacking. If you refuse to recognize the lesson or run away from the conditions ere they are conquered, you will have to meet them again and again in various forms in this and other lives until a victory is gained. Remember that the hard conditions of the environment are deliberately chosen by the soul that it may quickly gain the qualities needed. The instant this is done, the law is fulfilled. Hence there is no karma or anything else that can hold you to those conditions. Only thus can you find self-poise, for self-poise is the result of self-knowledge. The instant you begin to see that it is yourself who is responsible for all the disturbing influences that are around you, and that it rests with you to correct them, then you have begun in the right way to gain self-poise. The first thing to be gained is self-recognition. When buffeted by circumstance, you are apt to blame your suffering upon your conditions or upon others, or to think some divine power is punishing you. For it is most difficult to face yourself and recognize that the trouble lies in you. But while this is difficult to realize, still it is comforting to know that if the fault is within, the remedy also lies within. Once recognize this and really learn the lesson, not only mentally but intuitively, and you no longer have to experience the adverse conditions. When an earthen vessel is to be used, only a certain amount of fire is needed to harden and prepare the clay. But if it is a golden vessel to be placed upon the king's table, it must pass through a 7-time heated furnace, and be hammered and tested and purified until the gold is without a flaw. That it must be fashioned into the shape best adapted to its purpose. So is it with the vessel of clay which we call our personality. There must be all kinds of vessels, and each must have the preparation best adapted to its use. All wisdom gained from earthly experience is meant to help unfold your dormant faculties and make the personality one with its Father in heaven. There is nothing that confronts you that is not a step in this great journey called the cycle of necessity. Therefore realize that it is not your task or duties that weary you or retard your evolution, but your attitude of mind toward them. The permitting of everyday trifles to so occupy your mind that you never let them go. The little joys of life are just as satisfying as the little cares are annoying. While you are facing the little cares, watch out for the little joys. Many little joys wake the heart until like a glorious blossom it opens to the sun. If you dwell in the little joys, they run together and soon break out in a mighty soul-satisfying happiness, which will be like a strong, deep undercurrent of joy bearing you through all the cares and sorrows of life. Remember this and begin at once to look for every ripple of sunshine. Open the doors and let it in. In every heart there is a well so deep and still that it can reflect only one star at a time, And this star, whatever it is, for the first time it is reflected there, the guiding star of your destiny. Just as a great telescope can sweep the heavens and focus upon any star desired, so can you have for your ruling star anything you determine to focus upon. If your star be household worries, a desire to live in the same style as your neighbors, to expand your business, or the love and worship of money, or any other condition, even the worship of a personality, while it rains it shuts out the light from all other stars. Ye cannot serve God and mammon. Whatever it is that is reflected in this deep well of your innermost heart is the God you are worshiping. For worship is constant thought of the thing worshipped, a constant filling of the undercurrents of your mind with it, laying upon the shrine and offering to which you worship of your best efforts and thoughts. Whatever it is that occupies these deep undercurrents, whatever is poured into the deep places of your nature, even subconsciously, something that is always there, no matter how busy you may be on the surface, that is what you are worshiping. For it is that which you are giving your life and thought force to create. By these currents of force, you are literally molding the atoms of your bodies into vehicles through which that which you worship can manifest. You also create around you an auric world in which your dominant thought will be king, and all else subservient, no matter how much lip service is given to other things. There is only one thing that you can rightly place in the holy sanctuary and hope that it will dwell there forever, and that is the Christ. Let the Christ be king over all your thoughts, aspirations, and desires, and all things shall be cared for. He who seeth me in all things, and all things in me, loosen not his hold on me, and I forsake him not. And whosoever, believing in spiritual unity, worship me who am in all things, dwelleth with me in whatsoever conditions he may be. The little things of life may occupy the surface of your thoughts, but underneath all, in the holy sanctuary, the Christ dwelleth, and the Christ careth for all things. Your home, your children, your business, your petty cares are all but ripples on the surface, while deep down in the shrine of your heart dwells the Christ. Once having found this holy of holies and placed there in the one who alone is worthy of your worship, no matter how busy you are, how occupied with worldly cares, in an instant your consciousness can enter that sacred place and find rest and peace and communion. Then nothing can really fret you, for you carry the silence within you. The winds and tempest of earth only ripple the surface. In the deep places all is peace and calm. You have no fear, for you have entered the silence and have felt the strength and comfort and power of the Christ within. You know that his love pervades your life, and all are safe in his keeping. All things are safe and sure. The trials of your business and your home do not upset you now, for you know how to keep calm, where to find peace. The moment you find yourself getting disturbed, slip back into this calm, quiet interior place and find refreshment. Let the radiance of the center fill your life. The Christ is there. And no matter how the storm rages on the surface, or how you rock in the little boat of your personality on the storm-tossed sea of life, still you know that at the first call for help you will see the Christ walking on the water, and will hear the command, "Peace, be still."